What if the reason most people never build anything lasting, whether that is wealth, meaningful relationships, a career worth having, or peace of mind, is not because they lacked opportunity, but because they skipped the one thing Solomon said comes before all of it? Welcome to Proverbs, chapter 8, week number 8. Let's get into it. So, in the last chapter, temptation was calling from the shadows. It was persuasive, hidden, strategic, working quietly to pull someone in a direction they never consciously agreed to go. Well, here in chapter 8, wisdom does the exact opposite. Wisdom is calling out publicly, in the open, at the crossroads, at the gates, in the places where everyone can hear it. And I found that contrast rather interesting. And here's why. Because if someone is standing in public calling out to be found and people are still walking past it toward the louder voice, that's not a wisdom availability problem. Wisdom is there, right? That is an attention problem. Wisdom is not hiding. We are just drawn to whatever feels more exciting in the moment. And I think that this is one of those things that the chapter says without saying it directly. Wisdom is usually soft spoken and reserved. Temptation is usually louder and more appealing up front. And in a world that is constantly competing for your attention, soft spoken and reserved loses a lot of races it actually should be winning, right? Now, in Proverbs 8:11, that says, wisdom is far more valuable than rubies, and nothing you desire compare with it. And what caught me about that verse is the comparison. Solomon is not comparing wisdom to something worthless. He's comparing it to rubies, silver, choice gold. These are not cheap things. These are things that are definitely worth pursuing, worth working for once you have, and worth protecting once you have them. So the argument is not that money and material things are bad. The argument is that wisdom is the more important acquisition because it is the very thing that determines what you do with everything else. Making right decisions will get you the rubies. That is the sequence. And verse 18 really captures this. With me are riches and honor, enduring wealth and prosperity. And when Solomon talks about riches and honor and enduring wealth and prosperity following wisdom, I don't think he's only talking about money. Money is part of it, but enduring wealth looks different depending on where you are. In my From my thoughts, for some people it is financial. For others, it could very well be relational, right? So your reputation over time, the quality of the people around you, the peace of mind that comes from making decisions they do not have to walk back later. All of that is wealth, and all of it responds to the same thing, the quality of wisdom driving the decisions behind it. Wisdom is not anti wealth, right? Wisdom is what makes wealth sustainable once it actually arrives, once you obtain it. Now, there are three words that kept coming up in this chapter also that I wanted to actually look up. We may have talked about it before, but just in case if we didn't, some people use them interchangeably, but they're actually not the same. So we have knowledge. Knowledge is information, that is what you know. Wisdom is application, it's how you respond or how you move with the information that you know. And then we have prudence. This is a big one. Prudence is foresight, it is thinking ahead, it is asking, where does this decision take me if I keep moving like the way that I am? And the more I keep reading through Proverbs, the more I realize the whole book is built on prudence. Proverbs is not just about what feels good right now, it is about trajectory, where this path will eventually take you, the compounding effect of the small decisions most people are not paying attention to because they are too focused on how things feel in the present moment. Now, the chapter then goes somewhere that honestly caught me a bit off guard, right? I wasn't expecting it. It reads as though wisdom existed before creation. Proverbs 8:22 says, "The Lord formed me from the beginning before he created anything else." And then verse 30 says, "I was the architect at his side. I was his constant delight, rejoicing always in his presence." At first, that sounded a bit abstract to me, almost poetic in a way that felt hard to land practically. But the more I thought about it, the more I think there's something real here that just goes beyond theology and Christianity. If wisdom was present before anything was built, woven into the structure of how things are created and how things function, and we are made in that exact same image of the creator, then that creative capacity to build something meaningful is already inside of us. The question isn't whether we are the question is whether we are accessing it with wisdom or without it. Because wisdom being present at creation is not just a spiritual statement, it's a practical one. It is saying that the way things are designed to work, relationships, systems, careers, finances, they all respond differently depending on whether wisdom is driving the decisions behind them or whether impulse is, right? So the chapter also says wisdom hates a few things. It hates pride, arrogance, corruption, perverse speech. And when I read that, I did not immediately think of morality. I think of teachability because every single one of those traits listed, they have one thing in common. They all resist correction. And wisdom, by its very nature, has to stay coachable, has to stay open. The moment you become too proud to be corrected, you have already started moving away from wisdom without even realizing it. So, what this chapter is really saying when you pull it all together is that wisdom is constantly available, constantly speaking, it's standing in public, it wants to be found, and it is for our benefit, not just spiritually, but in real life, practically, and how we build and how we make decisions and where we end up. Now, I believe the problem has never been that wisdom was hiding. The problem is that not every voice competing for your attention is trying to lead you somewhere good. And the louder voices tend to win by default when we are not paying attention to what we are actually listening to. So, let me bring this into real life for a second and put it somewhere you can actually use it and feel it. So a lot of people in this space that's looking at this are currently building or rather rebuilding something right now. Maybe it is a career transition like me. Maybe it is relationships, right? And you're sitting on it longer than you want to admit. Maybe it is getting those finances together. Maybe it is the business idea. Whatever that is, okay? Um, Whatever that is. Maybe it's a personal rebuild after something fell apart that nobody around you fully understands. The difference between what actually gets built or rebuilt and what gets abandoned usually is not effort. Most people in a season or transition are not lazy. I don't believe they are. They're just busy. They're showing up, they're trying. The difference is usually the quality of thinking behind the decisions being made during the build. Whether wisdom is driving the process or whether urgency, emotion, and outside noise are. Because here's what gets me about this chapter. Wisdom was at the table when things were being created, not as an afterthought, as the architect. And if we carry that same creative capacity, again, Proverbs says, well, Genesis says we do. Well, the question is not whether we have what it takes to build something. The question is whether we are building with wisdom already in the room or whether we are figuring it out after things start to break down. That is the honest conversation most people in a rebuild need to have with themselves. Not more motivation, not another framework, just a clear look at what is actually driving the decisions inside the thing that they are very well trying to build. So here's where I want to get real with you. And I mean, actually, like real, bring you something real life. Okay. Proverbs 8 makes an argument that wisdom was present before anything was built, woven into the structure of how things are created and how they function. And being that we are made in that image, then the creative capacity to build something real is already inside of us. The question is whether we are moving with wisdom or without it when we try to access it. A lot of people are building right now a career transition, a business, a financial base, a new version of their life after something fell apart. And the difference between what gets built and what gets abandoned usually is not effort. It is usually the quality of thinking behind the decisions being made during the build. So I want to give you a prompt, something you can open right now, again, in ChatGPT, Claude, Manus, whatever you use, Gemini, and you can actually run it yourself. So here's the prompt. This is what you're going to type in. I'm going to put on the screen. I am currently building something in my life. It could be a career transition, a business, a financial goal, or a personal rebuild. I want you to ask me 5 questions about what I am building, the decisions I am currently making inside of it, and what is driving those decisions. After I answer, tell me honestly whether my decisions reflect wisdom, meaning long term thinking and foresight, or whether they reflect impulse, meaning what feels right or urgent in the moment. Then tell me what the trajectory of my current approach looks like if I stay on my current path. That's the prompt, ladies and gentlemen. And what makes it useful is the same thing that made prudence stand out to me in this chapter. Again, prudence is not just thinking ahead, it is asking, where does this decision take me if I keep moving like I am? Most people never ask that question out loud to anything or anyone, including themselves. This prompt will force the question and force you to answer it. Now, here's the thing, how it works. You want to make sure you run it honestly. Don't perform, give it the real answers, and then read what comes back the same way you would sit with a chapter of Proverbs or talking to a friend who's just blunt and honest. Because wisdom has been calling publicly this whole time, standing at the crossroads, at the gate, in the open. The question was never whether it was available. The question was whether you were willing to stop and actually listen. Week 8, Proverbs 8. You already know. I'm out. Peace.